Greetings. Hope everyone's doing well today. I wanted to start the video today just talking about attempted solutions. I think we need to be aware that most of the time when our clients come to see us, they've already tried to solve their own problem, and we need to acknowledge that. Often their solutions aren't quite as effective, and sometimes it can even create a persistence in the very problem they're trying to solve. So we need to kind of think of not so much why a problem happens, but how it's being maintained in the present moment. So if someone comes in and they have anxiety and we ask them, well, what have you done to solve this anxiety problem? A lot of times they'll tell you, I haven't done anything. But they may have tried to avoid what they perceive as the trigger that's causing it, or to rearrange their lives in a way to decrease their anxiety. They may have done overt things, as in trying to calm their nervous system and those kind of actions, which, common sense wise, all sounds like it's a logical way to solve the problem. Unfortunately, a lot of times people get in this loop of trying to solve a problem that doesn't work with their attempted solution. And then, as I mentioned, it helps that problem persist. So if someone has social phobia, social anxiety, what do? They move away from crowds. They don't interact with new people. And then their anxiety goes down. But unfortunately, then they get caught in this loop, this Wasilewicz and Nardone called it the perceptive reactive system. They get caught in this loop to where they start to have a symptom of anxiety, and then they pull away from it, avoid, the anxiety goes down, but unfortunately now they're caught in this pattern that they have to perform this action every time, and it may even make the anxiety worse. So how do we deal with those kind of issues? Well, in some ways it's actually a little more simple than we make it out. Simple but not easy. One thing we might do in some situations is to block the client's way of attempting to solve their problem. And we do it in a way that's very creative and hopefully helpful. So if someone, let's say, has obsessive compulsive disorder and has to wash their hands a certain number of times every half hour, we would, instead of trying to get them to stop doing the hand washing altogether, we may interrupt that process and pattern of having that intrusive obsessive thought, which leads to a compulsive action of hand washing, momentary relief, but now we're back in the cycle. We may ask them that if they're going to wash their hands, let's say 5 times every half hour, that between every time they wash their hands, they have to walk around their house 3 times, or they have to clean their toilet twice. Whatever it is, to interrupt the pattern of this almost solidified way of maintaining the problem. For example, I had a client one time, she was in such a habit of yelling at her pre-adolescent child who was a bit of, trouble at times, as they can be. And so she thought that the way to handle it was to yell. So it didn't work, so she continued to yell more. And so now she was caught in this loop thinking she'd done everything she could do. So I just asked if she'd be willing to sing the most annoying love song to her child when her child acts up, and to just feel free to follow the child around singing love songs from the 70s that are so annoying to young people. And pretty soon that whole interaction with the child and the parent had to shift and change, because what was happening, the parent would get upset, yell, then the child would react and pull back, and then they're in this back and forth kind of circular problem. So people who have certain depression symptoms, I've found, they try to solve those symptoms, but they often do things that end up solidifying and maintaining the problem. For example, social isolation. They feel better not talking to people in the momentary interaction, but then that lack of interaction almost continues this problem. So maybe taking some time when a client presents you with a problem and ask, what have you tried how have you tried to solve this previously? And to sit down and really take the time to see what patterns they've tried to use, and then maybe kind of altering those patterns, keeping them from their previous attempts, because it's almost like that's all they seem to be aware of to do, and they're going to try and do it automatically. For example, a couple who fights every evening after work. Well, you might have them schedule arguments before they leave for work. So if they all have to leave at 7:30 in the morning, maybe from 7 to 7:15 they schedule their arguments so they don't have to do it in the evenings. Now it sounds silly, but what you find is sometimes that little slight adjust causes the decrease in the arguments in the evening and possibly in time at all. So taking our time, stepping back, saying, how's this solution actually maintaining a problem, and being kind to our clients because they are doing the best that in that moment they know how to do. So showing some compassion, maybe even congratulating them. Hey, congratulations, you have done the best you can, and it's obvious that you care about yourself, your family, the world, that you're trying to solve the problem this way. So I think maybe we could tweak it a little bit, come up with a new way of doing this problem, a new process of doing this problem that might actually help you. And just kind of play with the client, taking the information they give you and adjusting it a little bit to where we can interrupt those attempted solutions, blocking them or doing them differently that causes then that to fall away so that the problem can just kind of drift off on its own rather than being held and maintained. So anyway, we'll talk more about this in future videos, but I want to just kind of throw it out there and just, feel free to leave a comment, tell me what you think, and good luck with everything. Have a great day.